Hey guys, so our vlog series is going to be about societal problems that have existed before the coronavirus crisis, and in particular how the crisis has highlighted and brought to the surface these problems.
I think it's safe to say that no society has dealt with the situation perfectly. It's probably impossible to deal with such a situation perfectly. All societies in these times are tested, and I think that's why it's important that we think about and talk about the societal problems that have led to inefficient or poor management of the situation. Of course, every country is different, and so every country has different societal problems which will manifest in different ways, especially in a crisis situation. And so I'm just going to take one example, and that's Bosnia Herzegovina. I picked this example because I used to live there, so I have good contacts there that and people that I've interviewed. So this is a case study that's close to home for me, close to the heart. I'm going to talk about corruption there, as this seems to be the main issue that came up as being an obstacle to sort of overcoming and managing the disease situation. Before we go any further, I think it's also important that we have a bit of background information about Bosnia Herzegovina. So it is one of the 7 countries, if you count Kosovo as a country, a bit controversial, which used to make up Yugoslavia. In the 1990s, Yugoslavia had a terrible civil war that probably most of you know about. The civil war was between different ethnic groups. I'm just going to call them that because it's very hard to find a politically correct term for it. But these ethnic groups essentially claimed territories and formed countries of their own. So the Croatians formed Croatia, the Serbians formed Serbia, and it would follow that the Bosnians formed Bosnia. And they did to an extent. But it's the only country where multiple ethnic groups still coexist despite having been at war very recently, which makes it a really interesting place but also quite complicated. And so the only way for these 3 ethnic groups, the Serbs, the Croats and the Bosniaks are the main 3 that I get discussed. The way that they kind of keep the peace is by having 3 presidents. And each president represents a different ethnicity. There's the Bosniak Muslim president, the Croat Catholic president, and the Serb Orthodox president. And these 3 hardly agree on things, and it makes it very difficult for any decisions to get made in the country, because this makes for an incredibly complicated system where everyone is constantly disagreeing and defending different interests. However, much to my surprise, as I was interviewing people in Bosnia, they tell me that the crisis has actually caused these 3 groups to, for once, have a common interest, which is controlling the disease. And so this is actually going to be a really positive episode, because while on one hand there's been sort of societal obstacles, on the other hand it's caused a lot of cooperation between groups which, you know, find it very difficult to cooperate over issues usually. It may not be so unsurprising that a country recovering from war and with such a complicated and young government, corruption evolves and finds a foothold in society. The corruption in Bosnia tends to be petty corruption. It's not super serious corruption like you would see in somewhere like South Sudan or Nigeria. It tends to be more like bribery and nepotism, which would be favoritism. Like having contacts which can get you places, and if you don't have the right contacts you can't do things, and this kind of creates this sort of like a corrupt hierarchy within the society. Many Bosnians do also think that there is more serious, or not more serious, but larger corruption within the government, especially in the form of embezzlement. I think that's enough for me for now. Now I'm just going to play some excerpts from a very casual interview that I did with a nurse in Bosnia, because he's of a medical background. He has a high understanding of the dynamics of a virus and what the disease really is. So he's a really interesting person to talk to.
Yeah, most are in quarantine. They just I was watching the news. They wanted to put Mostar in total quarantine, like for 24 hours from Monday to Friday. And right now it's from um, there's a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. Nobody's allowed to go outside. The stores, everything is closed except supermarkets. They work until 4:30 p.m. And yeah, they want to close this county, Herzegovinian county completely. So nobody from Sarajevo can get in Herzegovinian county. They proposed it, but we're waiting for an answer. I'm not sure if the government's going to allow it, so I'm not sure. We'll see.
Oh, that would be crazy. That would be so
Yeah,
intense.
I know. Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So,
So talk
but
to
you're
me.
still allowed to
What are
go
you doing?
outside, right?
Well, I like people below 18. They can't. They just issued a statement today now that like people below 18 they cannot go outside, and people 65 and over cannot go either at all. But they said today I was reading the memo. They changed something. They said uh, people from 65 and up can go outside for a couple of hours, and minor people like till 18, they can travel with cars. You can like pick them up and from one destination and bring them to home to the other destination, but they cannot go outside like walking or whatever. So
Oh God.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is the
yeah.
airport closed like for all flights now?
It is, yeah, they closed. As far as I know, yes. I mean, I know the couple of airplanes landed. Bosnia Herzegovina is getting some humanitarian aid in testing, in those tests, in masks, in I believe in respirators, 24-hour monitoring and stuff like that. I know the airport works for those kind of planes, cargo planes, I believe. Bosnia and Herzegovina received like 150,000 tests like yesterday. They shouldn't charge that. That's free. They got this for free. So I don't know why everybody's saying that they're like expensive. They're not buying them. I was really surprised how fast they react. It seems they through didn't want to go through by Italy steps like they did. Like Lombardia was like infected, and they knew a long time ago, and they kind of wanted to hide it because it's economy and tourism. And then a lot of people from Lombardia streamed down to the south, and then infected the south, and then you had a hot zone like a full country. Same thing that is happening in the U.S. right now. They thought, oh, this is gonna pass, and Massachusetts County. I'm always watching live news. Massachusetts County and New York, upstate New York. They pretty much hit badly, and then a lot of people from those states rushed down to Florida. Now they infected Florida because there's a 60% of this virus is kind of tricky. 60% of population not having any kind of symptoms, but they infected. They're not even aware that they're affected because they don't have any symptoms, but they carriers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I read
So
that.
no, I mean they pretty good, but they from the they I really admiring because they here the hospitals they really doing as much as they have and how the situation in B&H is.
Oh,
They're really
I've been to
doing
hospital
amazing
there.
job.
They've not got a lot to work with.
Exactly, yeah, but they're doing a great job, and they don't have a lot of stuff to work with, but they're doing a really great job. But I wouldn't. I swear to God, I would. I mean, I see U.S. I mean, United States who are like number one in like they have they have money, and it's nothing for them to take $100 billion from the Federal Reserve Bank. They like short of masks and ventilators and gloves and gowns. Imagine that. They borrowing it from China. China is actually just gave like 1 million of N95 masks, and it's going to be distributed now through US. Now, if they in that situation, I was like, hey, we good, man. I mean, we in here we have like 490 cases, 490 infected ones. Yeah.
You think it won't be so bad in Bosnia? Is there less?
I wish not. I hope not. I think they react pretty. I understand the measures are really too aggressive, sort of saying. You know, is isolation, you're not able to go home now, especially now if they're going to do a 24-hour lockdown and close the county completely. It will be really aggressive. But this is the only way, since you don't have a vaccine, and you know there is nothing.
Yeah, I think
that
also
it's
the
working.
hospitals in Bosnia, especially because of the thing that happened where some. You know about this? Rifat told me about, and I read about it on the internet. The guy from Italy that came to Italy, and then he came back to the hospital and
Yes,
gave it to everyone.
He died actually. He died like 2 days ago. What happened was, I'll be blunt. He went to Italy for skiing with his mistress, and she was pregnant, and they came in contact with somebody over there, and then when he came back, he experienced these symptoms. Now he had a friend who's a doctor in the medical center, and that guy let him in. I mean, that guy they should strip him off his license so he can never practice medicine. And he contaminated a whole area there, but they still did the good job. Like one of my cousins, our gynecologist, she actually delivered the child for this infected lady that came with him. She's in self-isolation now too. So like a lot of medical staff had to go to the self-isolation. You know, they've been tested and stuff. So it's crazy. And he died 2 days ago. He died. He was denying it that he didn't go, but you know, he admitted in admission office when he got into the hospital, he admitted to the nurse that he was in Italy, and then later on he was denying it, but it was too late. He was busted.
He must have paid to get back into Bosnia.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He probably paid the doctor as well. That's probably why he let him in.
Well, this doctor, he was his friend. He didn't have to pay him. He brought him in there on the back door.
I don't know if that's
worse crazy.
or better.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
you think that it will be okay in Mostar? Because I know that my experience of being in, I think is it the university hospital?
Yes.
I think that's where I was when I had
main medical center. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I was there, and they're always super busy, but they seem like from my impression, that they don't always have enough staff anyway. Like they always seem to be one person
Very true.
Person to the next person, so they already have that problem, but they're understaffed.
Exactly. Eva, especially now. Yeah, especially now they short of staff. Why? Before this corona outbreak, when the Germany opened their borders from Bosnians, everybody fled there. You know, because of the situation here. You know, and economy that these politicians made. You know, they created this economy and hatred and whatever, and a lot of people, especially medical workers, were, you know, found their homes in Germany, in Switzerland, especially in Germany. So they were really short of staff. You know, they were like hiring left and right. You know, but now when Mostar was hit, when Bosnia Herzegovina was hit, yeah, they're very short of staff right now. So I don't know. It's gonna be tough one. This one's gonna be tough. I see Boston Medical Center, Children's Hospital Boston, where I work, and I talked to a couple of my friends there. I mean, that's a hospital with 5,000 people in it. They short of staff. Why? Because so many cases they're getting. You cannot be prepared for this. It doesn't matter what kind of economy you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have. They were not prepared. They completely short of staff. They cannot make enough gowns as much as they can spend them. Same thing with masks and gloves and everything that they're working with. It's just impossible because a lot of people are getting sick so rapidly, so fast. That's the problem with this virus. The incubation period is 14 days. You don't even have a symptoms, but you are contagious. That's why I'm saying not only here, even in like I said, in those countries, who have have millions and millions of dollars or euros. You just cannot be prepared for this kind of stuff because there's no prevention. The only prevention that you have is this 18th century self-isolation thing.
I'm surprised that the Bosnian government, maybe this is just me being really skeptical of them, but I'm surprised that they managed to move so fast. Most Bosnians tell me that the government is not
Yeah,
good at
it's
making
true.
decisions. I mean, there's
Exactly.
three prime ministers, so
This is the only country that they have 3 presidents. And they're in different religions and considering themselves as different nationality, but that's the key. Everything moves here slow, so that's why I'm saying I'm very surprised that all 3 presidents moved so fast. They and government was presiding, and they made the decisions, and everything starts happening pretty fast. Comparing to Italy, who's have 50 times more money than we do. They put themselves in this situation that they are right now. So, yeah.
Maybe it can be taken as one of the few cases where Serbs, Croats, and Bosniak presidents managed to agree on something.
That's very true. I was talking about it yesterday, and then, before this corona outbreak, they're always fighting over, they understand each other perfectly well, but, for audience, us, it has to look like, they hate each other or whatever, but, everything is about the money, they harshing people into each other or whatever, spreading hatred and stuff like that. And it's very interesting right now. There's no talk about those stuff anymore. They're so focused on money. They're getting so much money into this country, this population is not going to see it. They're going to put this in their own pockets. That's for sure. That's one other sadness of we Bosnians are extreme people. We go, we're very up. We're bringing everything to absurd. So
one last thing I was wondering, I was just wondering for my own sort of what happens now. What happens to the Roma? They just
what happens?
Go to their little, I don't know where do they even go to now?
I didn't catch that. What happens to the
Gypsies.
Roma people? Oh yeah. Well, you know how they are. They have their own that place where they live. Nothing from my point. Nothing changed for them. It changed that they cannot walk from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and because they're arresting people. And it's pretty expensive, like 500 kms.
Yeah, that's so much. I read that. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
They don't have nearly
but they staying at the same places where they are.
You mean in their little shanty town places?
Yeah, and they're on the southern part of Mostar where they have those little houses, gutters and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I needed to talk to you about. You've told me so much. It's been really interesting.
Hey, no problem, no problem. I'm glad that I can help. I mean, if you can think of anything else, I'm here. No problem. You can call me. I'm not doing anything actually.
Admir brought up a few really interesting societal problems throughout the whole interview. I'm just going to go into some of them a bit more and sort of talk about them in a bit more depth. The first thing is something that I brought up, which was the story of this man who went to Italy with his mistress and then came back. This story was very big on social media in Bosnia, according to my Bosnian friends, and he essentially was the first case in that city, in Mostar, and he, as was said in the interview, he came back and then he bribed the guards at the border, which is not so abnormal if you're being denied entry. And then when he got there was some nepotism in that the doctor, who was a sort of a friend or a connection, sort of brought him in the back door of the hospital, and he was, according to this article that I read on this online sort of a news outlet, he was then put into a critical care unit for people with pulmonary conditions. So he was in there with people who are very vulnerable to the virus. He was also, all the medical staff were getting exposed to him without using the proper safety measures, and it was only later that they realised that it might be corona and tested him for corona. Had he come in the normal way, he would have had to go through all the safety procedures as anyone else would, but this favoritism and this corruption within the system allowed him to sort of bypass many safety measures, and this became very dangerous and led to many of the medical staff who were exposed to him now being in self-isolation for 2 weeks at a time when they're very much needed. The second time that Admir talks about corruption, he talks about grand corruption on a government level. He says something along the lines of, "We Bosnians never see the money, it goes straight into their pockets." This is a standard kind of description of embezzlement that we're all pretty familiar with corrupt governments. And I think it just really shows that corruption is very much part of the system, not just on a smaller level of bribery and individuals, but also on a larger level. There's also quite some corruption, and it goes all the way through the system. And I think this also, for me anyway, made it a very pleasant surprise that the government has actually reacted really fast and efficiently to the crisis situation. This is where this vlog becomes rather more optimistic, because, well, corruption is obviously there and has played a really negative role in trying to manage the crisis situation. At the same time, the common goal of managing the situation has created some kind of unity within a government which is usually fairly corrupt and uncoordinated. I think here it's interesting because we came at this project with the sort of preset hypothesis that societal problems were going to play a very negative role in the crisis situation, but we did not foresee that actually there could be really positive outcomes to this crisis. And I think this also highlights then the sort of not to be sort of negatively biased and to keep your mind open to also the positive outcomes from this. A final societal problem, which is not to do with corruption, but one that Admir brought up that I really wanted to kind of like stress, is the fact that he said that when Germany opened their borders, many of the medical staff fled there. I think here he's referring to kind of a brain drain, and I think also, of course, during the war times and periods of serious instability, it's been somewhere that people have fled. Many refugees have left the area, and I think here it really highlights that when you in an area where it is not a desirable place to live, and unemployment is high and opportunities are low and pay is not good, people do leave who are the sort of the most needed in society. And this is the problem that he sort of mentioned as sort of underpinning the whole issue of understaffing in the medical system. I think this societal problem can be found in many, especially more developing countries.